I think for Twitter and Facebook, right, what people will be staring at first will be their monthly active users,
right,
because both have slowed down, haven't they?
They have, but Facebook has multi-brands, so Instagram is still got room to go, and WhatsApp has still room to go. So I think that's one thing. And I think for Facebook, since it's a real money maker and it's an advertising juggernaut, really only second to Google, or with Google at this point, I think investors should be looking at that too, because Facebook's in full monetization mode.
They are.
Twitter's,
mobile monetization.
That's correct, and Twitter's not yet. Facebook, it's interesting, if you go back 3, 4, 5 years, whenever it was, when everyone in advertising said that social media is no place to advertise because you don't know what you're getting, you're surrounded by junk, but the reality is you're surrounded by what people want to see.
Exactly.
And Facebook has become, and I think will be, one of, if not the best ad medium we see for the next long time.
We see that already, and it's really, right now, a race between Facebook and Google. But I'm interested in what you said about Instagram and WhatsApp, right? I think Instagram has something like 300 million users. WhatsApp, I believe, has something like 800 or so.
Big.
It's huge. So how do they, though, monetize that? Because they haven't really yet.
So Instagram, when they really turn it on, and they've dabbled with it a little bit, and we've used Instagram actually around the edges where we get someone who's followed and we then figure out how to get you to go over here to get the link when they really turn it on, and they've experimented with it. And you see ads in line with images, just as they're now doing on Facebook. So we're out of the ads at the top and the right where we never looked on web pages,
now it's
or
in
don't
your
look
feed.
It's in your feed. You're not 100% sure it's an ad. I think Facebook's doing a good job to keep the FTC at bay and says, hey, this is sponsored, but they don't say, hey, this is sponsored.
This is sponsored. And you like it as an entrepreneur?
I think that they really are nailing it on monetization.
What about Twitter?
But and Instagram is really very similar to Facebook in terms of it's a unit, it's my friend, my friend, it's an ad. They will do very well with ads on Instagram. Lots
I don't know. I have to see it. I'll have to see it to really judge. But what about Twitter?
So I think Twitter's a tougher one, because Twitter's not a pure social network, and I think we're now realizing that social networks are actually a good place to advertise, because whatever's surrounding you is stuff you really want. And at Twitter, we're following people that we don't necessarily know. It's a great broadcast medium, and they just have work to do. So I think in this quarter they've been a touch distracted. So Adam Bain's a really solid guy, and maybe he's been able to hold it all together, but he's a little bit running for CEO, and he's got this new guy who's maybe going to be CEO, and the ads, so it's tougher to recruit, it's a little tougher to retain, advertisers aren't going to cut as long a deal, and I think that if anything it's in their interest to lower expectations, and I think that they have an MAU problem. They have a user issue. I think Facebook, because it's so big, in fairness to Facebook, it's like, okay, now let's see this thing monetized. I don't think Facebook has, yes, we always want these things to grow, but I think Facebook continues to prove that people use it. So we were scared a year or two ago. The kids are leaving, but you know what? It's people with dollars. I mean, older people are using Facebook, and there's really no reason for kids to leave.
I think
it's kind of like the telephone. It's like if my mother uses the phone and I use it next.
I think I read somewhere like the fastest growing segment right now is people over 50 who are using Facebook. I mean, they're going on to look at
but they happen to have more money than kids who are 16.
Exactly.
There's a lot to be said for that.
Okay, so Square and the IPO news that came out on Friday. We have a photo, because you want to make a point here about Square and the whole payments processing world. Guys, let's bring up this photo. What does this contain?
This is just my great photo from the weekend.
Okay, so describe what this is.
To make the point, well, this is, I'm at a gas pump. I don't even remember where it was.
There we go.
And those are the payment options. And while there's like 3 or 4 Gulf, you'll notice that there's everybody from Visa and MasterCard, which you would expect, and a bunch you've never heard of. And we don't yet have Apple Pay and Google Pay and other things, or Android Pay there. So what we're going to see is...
Where were you, by the way? Because I see Mac. Mac is a Philly thing. But were you near Philadelphia?
No, I was actually, I guess, to give away my weekend plans, I must have been driving to the Hamptons, and I needed gas. And I was just amazed at that, because, I popped in whatever card I used. So your point is that getting into payments, it's a very low bar. Well, interestingly, so to the average person, it's like, oh my God, payments is so complicated. But it's actually not that complicated. And what these guys are doing is they're fighting for retail share of voice. Because if I can get the consumer to use use mine, then I have the chance to pick up that 2.5 or 2.7% interchange fee as the money information. It's just a big information system. Short of what investment bankers do, this is just moving regular money around for candy bars and gasoline.
Right.
And it's just not rocket science. And what Square did, which was smart, is Jack came up, because he's a smart guy, he came up with the Square Reader, which a lot of companies adopted, and then he gets to move from there into lending, into other kinds of financial qualities.
But here's the thing. Every other day I keep hearing about a new company that's going into payments. I heard about this one over the weekend, Flint, which instead of using the little square thing now, you can just do it right in your app. I mean, it seems like everybody and their mother is
If you'd like me to enable Betty Pay, I think we could. I think we could probably do it.
So is that a threat to Square?
Sure, because it's actually not nearly the barrier to entry that you think it is. It's about capturing consumer. All the back end stuff you can get from others. There's a fascinating conference that has been around. I think you guys actually covered it, called Money 2020.
Yes.
It's all of 3 years old, and it had something like 7,000 people. And I remember the logo list was about 250 strong. And frankly, if you have a way to touch consumers, whether it's a New York Giants Visa card where the Giants get cut in even though Visa does all the back end of it, or you want to create something from scratch, we've done that. And when we started, it's like, oh my God, I don't know the acronyms. But once you do and you realize that it's a transaction from here at the gas pump that has to find its way back to the consumer's bank, and there's a bunch of guys in that little spaghetti thing in between who are taking off little bits of basis points, you go, oh, you know what? It's not so hard.
And by the way, I mean, I don't know if anybody has really any loyalty to how their payments are processed, right? There's no brand loyalty. So when you think about it, Scott, I mean, we were all abuzz. We were talking about this in our meeting right before, all abuzz about Apple Pay. Yes, it's convenient, and yes, it's Apple, but, is it really all that big of a deal?
Well, Apple, brilliant as they are only dealing with a very small part of the equation. Which is that front-end piece with consumers and not upsetting the rest of the ecosystem, which, of course, as we've seen with any other business, once it gets big, they will, and they will be their own financial institution, I believe, as part of it. The other guys are just, again, they're moving the dollars across, but no, there is loyalty. If you take a look at Capital One, 2% cash back, and American Express gives points in miles. No, there is loyalty, but, you can get into the business, and then you can develop loyalty programs.
Loyalty on price.
But
right?
Well, it's on price, but for a lot of people, or service. American Express will, depending on which card you get up the stack to platinum, they'll give you back. They kind of guarantee everything. So there's a difference. But those are the consumer-facing pieces.
Yes.
As soon as it leaves the consumer or the swipe and it goes into a commodity plumbing system.
So bottom line, Scott, before we go, do you think Square is going to do well in this IPO?
So. One of the interesting questions is it really intended to do an IPO, or is Jack being as smart as we think he is, and he puts it up for IPO earlier than some others, which is a good thing because we'll see the likes of Airbnb and Uber go next year. So on the one hand, he's smart and gets in front of it because there's only so much money. The other one is he puts it up for IPO, which is, I don't know if it's half the time, but a lot of the time companies get picked off. So whether it's a PayPal or somebody else that picks it off, and then he gets to go, you don't need me because you would get rid of the CEO anyway, so you know what, I'll go run Twitter.